the solution? Solution is taking off the hearing aids. I've discovered the solution is taking out the hearing aids. It's one less thing to fall off my face. It's really wonderful to see everyone today. I know that a couple of people I've spoken to this week have said that they are, shall we say, fully satisfied with holidays. They said something about being filled up or something to that, something to that regard. And so, given all of that, it's good to see all of you today bringing your sincerity and goodness to this place. I also want to acknowledge and welcome our new refuge takers from yesterday. So, congratulations to Eric and Mike and, who else is here from yesterday? Anybody else here from yesterday? In any case, thanks. We had a lovely day yesterday here with 5 people taking refuge, and looking forward to, it's like visiting yesterday. So I'm really, really happy to have this opportunity to speak to you today. It's a bit of a, what shall we say, it's been a marathon this week for people with their holiday planning and holiday activities, but it's also been kind of an exciting time for us at KTC because we not only had yesterday's refuge ceremony, we're going to have today's programming, and then tomorrow we're going to have our First Light celebration that we have every January 1st, where we pray for peace in the world at dawn, at sunrise. And I always, I'll just make the story small today, but the First Light ceremony, the First Light ceremony was on January 1st in the year 2000. And it came about at Karma Triana Dharma Chakra, KTD Monastery, our home monastery in Woodstock, New York, is where it began. And it was started by someone from the Columbus KTC, Michael Duran, who went to live at KTD Monastery. He was between jobs, and he was, looking for an assignment or something to do. And I said, well, why don't you visit KTD and see if they need anybody? 17 years later, he had become and served as the corporate secretary for KTD Monastery for a number of years. And as part of his work, he was a fundraiser. And he developed the idea of First Light so that people could sponsor lamps in order to help raise money for the monastery. And it's been wonderful. And so I just put it on my Facebook page, or did I? I may have forgotten to do that, okay? But put it on my Facebook page. You can still sponsor lamps at KTD today. And you can have them on for a half a year, a whole year, or just a week, just however long that you would like to sponsor a lamp. Now, what we're doing here tomorrow is we'll have some lamps here that we're using the electric variety. Is that right? Okay, we're going to use the electric lamps tomorrow and light these lamps for the benefit of dispelling the darkness that's in our world right now. I mean, there's almost... there's no end of the need for love, compassion, and wisdom in these times. There's just we're not going to run out of our need for this. And so we're going to try to light as many lights as possible tomorrow. And so we'll be doing the lamp offering prayers that Michael Duran had written for this purpose by the great lamas, His Holiness Karmapa, Taisich Rinpoche, Jaltsa Rinpoche, and others. And we'll be reciting those tomorrow at dawn, which for us is around 7:30 in the morning. Now, this is awfully early for anybody who has stayed out partying. Did I say that out loud? Okay, on New Year's Eve, but you can also join us by Zoom. We'll be here via Zoom as well for the lamp offering prayers, as well as the Chenrezig Compassion Prayer service, we'll be doing that tomorrow morning. And then we have folks bringing goodies, and so we'll have a little breakfast period, and I may give a small talk tomorrow. It won't be very long. It'll probably be 15, 20 minutes of a talk tomorrow. But I'm looking forward to seeing folks there, and do feel welcome to join us on Zoom tomorrow, and bring an electric candle with you. You can go to our website, columbusktc.org, and download on the online shrine room or the virtual shrine room. You can download the prayer texts we'll be using, and you can do them in your PJs from tomorrow morning. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about change, because when the year turns over, I don't know if you were like this when you were a kid. I found myself as a teenage babysitter on New Year's Eve one time, writing for myself a list of my resolutions. That was the first time I can remember making any kind of New Year's resolutions, was when I was a teenager. I didn't think of it otherwise. And I remember writing about wanting to be a better person and wanting to be more sincere and be a better friend and all of these kinds of things that teens are thinking about. And but since then, I think every one of us sees the new year as a time of new beginnings. And so I thought, well, from a Buddhist point of view, what would be the one thing we would want to change about ourselves in the new year that would be really powerful and effective, and yet not too hard? Not too hard, right? I mean, all of us would like to be stronger, and maybe lose a little weight, maybe be a little kinder. You know, there's all kinds of things we would like to do, and we need strategies to do that. And my favorite strategy comes from my own teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, because when I was a new practitioner, I was trying to make a change. I was trying to add meditation to my everyday life. I was trying to make meditation a daily habit. And I was having trouble. I was struggling with it. And I said, Rinpoche, if you've stopped your practice, if you've stopped meditating, I notice it when I stop meditating, but how do you get started again? How do you restart a practice that's kind of been a little bit stopped? And he said, through the translator, he said, no tips, no tricks, just start. Just start again. Just start meditating again. No tips, no tricks, just do it. And I'm like, that was really helpful. In a way I didn't expect it to be helpful. So I'm not going to have any tips or tricks for you today about how to restart a stop practice, because apparently I've already got that advice. But people, what I will tell people is, if you ever do find yourself in that situation where you've stopped practicing and you feel bad about not practicing your meditation and you want to restart it, you can actually restart it with the thought that this is part of life, change is part of life, and I'm going to make a change for the better today, and I'm going to ask the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, my refuge, I'm going to ask the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to help me with this change, to help me make this change. They're my higher power, right? The Buddha is the teacher, the Dharma is the path, and the Sangha is the community. By taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I've got a very powerful force to rely on when I want to make a change. And so I don't have to make the change by myself. I can make the change with some help from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have traveled this path before me, and they know all the pitfalls, and they probably also had a period of time where they weren't practicing either. So, and so that's what I would advise any person. If you stop practicing for some reason and you want to restart, ask the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to help you, but also recognize that feeling bad about not practicing is probably only a good strategy for give yourself 5 minutes. Give yourself 5 minutes to feel as bad as possible about not practicing, but then sit it to the side. Because otherwise, the negative feeling about yourself, like, oh, I'm a bad person, I didn't practice, or I'm not really moving ahead in my life, and so forth and so on, I'm just so bad. You can do that for a few minutes, but don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. Because that will actually hold you back as you try to make your change. So I think that that's a piece of, that is a tip or a trick that I learned from my own experience, was to just start again, and anytime my guilt comes up, say, I handled that, guys, I handled that. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, help me out. So that's a little bit about restarting a stopped practice. But as usual, I forgot to say the prayer at the beginning. That's all right. I need a mother some days. Thanks, Ma. So we're going to start with the four-line refuge prayer, which we will recite 2 times in English, and then the third time we'll recite it in Tibetan. It starts with the words, in the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Now we'll recite in Tibetan. O Sanje Chudan Sochi Chonamla Jang Chu Pardu Dani Kyap Suchi Daji Jinso Jibe Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sanjay Druparsho. Thanks, everyone. I'll recite a short prayer and then we'll begin. Oh, Palden Sawelama Rimboche, Tagi Chior Pede Tenshala, Kadrin Jembo Gane Che Sunte. Kusum tugging a drop sal to so. Okay, thanks very much. So I'm going to base my remarks today on a teaching that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche gave a number of years ago about a single change that a person can make in their life that would be a game changer for them, that would help them to change their outlook and to change their experience in the world. As you know, the Buddha's teaching on the Four Noble Truths is that suffering's part of life, and that suffering has a cause, and that suffering has a solution, and that there's a path that leads to the end of suffering. Those of you who aren't familiar, I'll give a short summary. The Buddha's basic teaching, the very first teaching he gave, was that all things come from causes. And so in that way, because suffering is part of life, and because we resist suffering so much, we actually cause ourselves more trouble as we seek to cope with the suffering that arrives in our life, and we seek to escape the suffering that arises in our life. And so by telling us in his first noble truth, his teaching on the first noble truth, that suffering is part of life, he's telling us this is how things are. Don't try to make things different than what they are. In other words, don't fight your life. Find ways to work with your life. And so he said suffering is part of it. So you will have some suffering. So find coping methods that are healthy. Find coping methods that are good for you. And so the second noble truth is then an analysis of what causes suffering. And as the Buddha described it, All suffering comes from within us due to grasping and clinging. When we grasp and cling toward people, things, ideas, situations, when we cling and grasp, you can see how, as Pema Chodron, the Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron said, things are hurting so much because I'm holding on so tight. And that brings us to the third noble truth, which is if suffering is caused by clinging and fixation, the solution has to be to release and relinquish clinging and fixation, or, to put it simply, letting things go. But this is very hard. It's not easy. And you can't say to someone who is suffering, just let that go. It's not fair, it's not right. So what we have to do is look more deeply within ourselves to find other ways of working with our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so in the fourth noble truth, the path offers us a path. It gives us a step-by-step instruction on how to relinquish this grasping, how to relinquish the clinging, and how to be happier in our lives. And so if we were to summarize that fourth noble truth, the path that leads to the end of suffering, most people use the descriptor of the Eightfold Noble Path of right action, right thought, right livelihood, and all the rest. But I prefer to use the 4 statements made by the Buddha. And he said, do no harm, practice virtue, tame your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Since that last one is just a summary, the other 3 stand as a very simple description of the path of Buddhism. Do no harm. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt others. Practice virtue. Take care of yourself and benefit others. And tame your mind. It means to practice meditation. By practicing meditation and allowing our attention to come to rest on an object and returning that attention over and over and over again when it wanders, we get to know our mind, we get to see our patterns, and we get inspiration and find methods for changing those thoughts. And you might think, well, how do you change your thoughts? The answer lies in the technique of meditation itself. Anyone here who has ever tried to practice meditation knows that when you place your attention on an object, it will stay there, but only for a short period of time. And after a short period of time, our attention will wander into the past, perhaps, or into the future. And we're not present anymore with the object of our meditation. And so the technique is that when we find ourselves distracted in the future or the past, we stop for a moment. We halt, as my friends in 12-step like to say. We stop. We take a time out. And in meditation, we touch lightly the distracting thought. We even can label it thinking and let it go. And then return our attention to the breath gently and think of that as a fresh start. We're having a fresh start. We're starting again fresh. And this noticing, releasing, and then returning, that's the mechanism for letting go. That is the basic skill we learn in meditation. It is the basic it's the basic technique for letting go of anything and everything. It's just that moment. And what you may have noticed in your own meditation, is that sometimes when you let that thought go, it doesn't go away, it comes back. But sometimes when you let that thought go, it disappears completely. And when that happens, this is an encouragement to us to realize that we can make positive change in our life, because every thought we have is just like that. It's not made of anything. It's not made of atoms or molecules. It's not a solid object. We can actually let go of that thought in the moment, and then it disappears. And then we can return our attention to our object of meditation and rest again for another short period of time. Then when we wander again, we notice, we let go and return, and notice and let go and return. And by doing this over and over and over again, gradually the period of attention gets a few seconds longer, and the period of wandering gets a few seconds shorter. And that over time, the period of being able to rest on the object gets a little longer and a little longer, and the return gets a little quicker and a little smoother. And what I tell people is that the gift that is given to us by meditation is recognizing that thoughts are discontinuous, recognizing that thoughts are not made of concrete, and that they can disappear. And as such, we have a newfound power over them. We now actually can see them with a perspective we didn't have before. Before, we were at the mercy of these thoughts, but now we see that in a controlled environment where we're just doing one thing, and that's attending to our technique of meditation, whether it's breath awareness or being aware of an object, a visual object or a sound object, whatever our object of meditation is, by attending to that, we can, with comfort, relinquish everything, because that's the purpose of our sitting, is to relinquish everything. And by relinquishing everything, we give ourselves some space to see ourselves with a new perspective. And that new perspective also allows us to see our problems in a new perspective and our difficulties in a new perspective. And when we do that, when we can see our problems and so forth with a new perspective, then we can begin to make changes. And the changes can be just tiny changes, like not maintaining negative thinking and so on and so forth. And but we can also begin to add thoughts, add positive thoughts to the mix. It's like one of those things where we, as all of the torrents of thoughts go by, we may have lots of negative ones, but we start to purposefully toss in a few really positive ones. And as we toss in more positive thoughts into our daily mind stream, we actually find that the stream itself begins to take on a more positive feel over time. It doesn't happen right away, but it does happen. So this is something we're thinking about. Now, the reason I brought this up is in case meditation is new to you, those of you who are watching from home or listening to us at a distance, I wanted to just put the technique in front of you so that you would have a capsule idea of the Four Noble Truths and how meditation allows us to change our thoughts. Because the change I'm going to talk about came from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche in an article, a teaching he gave that had a very funny title. And I've spoken about this teaching before, and so if you hear the title, you'll recognize it. How to Become the Darling of the World. How 80s. Now, how to become the darling of the world. He gave this teaching in the 1980s, and it's still, so it sounds a little bit old-fashioned. But the idea is there. The idea is that sometimes we have negative habits, and we don't necessarily see them right away, but all of our friends do, and sometimes our really kind friends will tell us what our problems are, hopefully with kind language that allows us to actually hear them and to actually take what they're saying in. So this is something also that we can get from meditation, the practice of meditation, the ability to take in information and see where it's coming from and why. But Khenpo Rinpoche said in this teaching on how to become the darling of the world, he said everybody wants to be cared for. Everyone wants to be loved. And yet, because of our clinging and fixation, the cause of suffering, remember that? Second noble truth. Because of clinging and fixation to ourselves and our own ideas about things, due to our clinging and fixation, we can't allow people to tell us things we don't want to hear. We have no room for that kind of information. So if we can begin to let go, just even a little bit, of our own situation, then we can begin to hear them in perspective, where they're coming from and what their suffering might be that leads them to experience us in this way. And so he said we have to listen to people and hear what they are telling us and what information they're giving us if we want to make a change. He said, but we could also add something, just one thing, add one thing to our mind stream. And that is the wish to be of benefit to everyone we meet. The wish to be of benefit to everyone we meet. It's spoken of by Shantideva, who wrote in the 8th century. He said, he made this aspiration. He said, let's see if I can find it. It starts with verse 16. Nope, not on that one. Yeah, it's this one, 16. He says, if those who see me entertain a thought of anger or devotion, may these states supply the cause whereby their good and wishes are fulfilled. I love this. I'm going to read it again. If those who see me entertain a thought of anger or a thought of devotion, may these states supply the cause whereby their good and wishes are fulfilled. In other words, even if people hate me, may they attain enlightenment. And then he continues, and this is chapter 3 of Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, if you want to look this up. Chapter 3 on commitment, verses 16 and 17, if you want to look it up. Verse 17, all those who slight me to my face or do me any other evil, even if they blame or slander me, may they attain the fortune of enlightenment. Wow. That's just a wow. Because what he's saying here is that once we have generated the wish to be of benefit to everyone, and we carry that wish within us always, then even if somebody dislikes us, even if someone dislikes us, it doesn't mean we have to stand there and let someone abuse us. That's not what this is about. This is not about enabling bad behavior. This is about remaining composed in situations where people are throwing negativity at us. Maintaining our composure in that situation. If we can do that, if we can maintain our composure, then we can maintain the wish to be of benefit to them. And maintaining that wish is what brings about their benefit, because we're seeking to benefit them. So we're saying, even if people see me and don't like me, may they benefit. May I benefit them anyhow. And this may seem like a bit of a childish wish, kind of like wishing for a pony, but it's not like that at all. It's the idea is that we wish to be of benefit in every situation. Many of us come out of situations saying, oh man, I could have done that better. I could have said that better. I could have not set off that family member or that friend. I could have done that better. But rather than going down the drain with a kind of guilt or shame about how we have behaved, if instead we say, and next time may things go differently. May things go differently now. That would be really a positive outcome. But to go back to how to become the darling of the world, Khenpo Rinpoche said that one of the benefits of this is that our affect changes over time when we internalize this wish. Because at first we always look to others like, oh, I wonder what their game is. I wonder what their angle is. I wonder if they're going to try to cheat me or if they're going to try to put something over on me and so forth. But then slowly, when we become more focused on, may I be of benefit to everyone I meet, then we're going to say, oh, that person's really suffering. That makes them act like that. Wow. Because it allows us to see something we were not willing to see before, which is other people's suffering. At first, we're only concerned with our own suffering, but then slowly we become aware of the other people who are around us who are suffering continuously, and it's amazing. We can say, well, that person who said those sharp words to me is just suffering from their own anger and resentment, or maybe they're suffering from their own jealousy, or maybe they're suffering from their own fear of not being enough. And that's why they came at me with those angry words or that angry attitude. So beginning to understand is good, and then adding the wish to be of benefit to everyone. I'll tell you how I started practicing this. I started practicing this by trying to remember every day when I would wake up. I would do my refuge prayers before I even got out of bed because I didn't want to forget them, to do them. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And then I would actually sit and meditate a little bit just without even getting out of bed, just sit and watch my breath for a minute or 2 minutes. And then I would say, I made up an aspiration, just made it up, and I still say it every day now. May everything I do today benefit beings in some way, and may we all become Buddhas. Because there's two parts to that aspiration. There's the wish that everything that I do benefits beings in some way, even if they don't like me, as Shantideva says, or even if I'm an object of fun for them. They make fun of me, or even if they look at me and say, "What's her game?" And even if they give me the side eye in a public place or whatever, maybe I'm talking too loud, maybe I'm laughing too loud, and they kind of give me the eye. I've actually started my morning by saying, may I benefit that person who I just annoyed. Doesn't mean I'm going to go out there and try to annoy people, but I'm trying to make use of everything here. I don't want to waste a single moment of the possibility of benefiting beings. And I say frequently when I go up to the microphones to ask a question in a public forum, I almost always think to myself, well, as I'm standing there looking at the microphone, I think, well, even if I make a complete fool of myself, may that be of benefit to somebody. Maybe laughing at me and at my misfortune, at misphrasing something or mispronouncing something, maybe their moment of smiling makes them feel a little bit better. I mean, may that be of benefit to others. And so what Rinpoche said about this wish is that if you can make this wish every day, it will slowly, he said it will start a momentum of goodness within you, like a little engine. And this, trying to say this phrase every morning to yourself, may I be of benefit to everyone I meet, or may everything I do today benefit beings in some way, and may we all become Buddhas. The may we all become Buddhas part is very important, because otherwise it's still just about me. And may we all go beyond even just making each other happy. May we go beyond that, and may we all become enlightened beings. And by becoming enlightened beings, may we all continue to spread this amazing thought to every part of the world. And it's really just a way to, I think it's like a drenching rain that can slowly nourish plants in the soil, because when we water plants, it's nice to give them a gentle rain rather than a gush, and to let that gentle rain seep into the ground day after day after day. And so if we can let this thought seep into our thoughts day after day after day, then slowly we might have our general affect change. We might see a general change in our affect. And that will mean that we actually start becoming the person who everybody likes to see. When you come into the room and people like to see you, that's a good feeling. And then that feeds the wish to be of benefit even more. And that's a good thing to aspire to, is to be the cause of someone else to smile. My husband is a big believer in this. People ask me frequently about my husband. Well, what kind of Buddhist is your husband? Is he a Buddhist? And I said, yes, he's actually card carrying. He got one of the refuge cards and the whole thing. He took refuge, a couple years after me, and maybe I think it was like 3 years after me. And he tried the meditation thing. Wasn't for him. He tried all that and wasn't for him. He said, you know what? He said, my practice is going to be making people happy and being kind. He said, that's my Buddhist practice. And I'm like, you go, guy. And so that's his practice today. The other day, he was on the telephone with, yes, a customer service representative. We all know what they go through, customer service representatives. And he ended up making her laugh at least 3 times on the call while he was giving her the basic information she needed for his upcoming doctor appointment, And so he said, when he turned off the phone, he said, dinner conversation. I will be dinner conversation tonight. I will be the weird guy who said those weird things to her in answer to her basic questions like, how are you today? And he will often answer that question by saying, you are not cleared for that information. Or he will say, I am so good, I'm doing so well, I could be twins. So he comes up with many of these phrases, and it makes other people's spirits a little lighter. And I think about him, and it's like, you go, guy. That's what I want to do when I grow up. Not necessarily be dinner conversation, but still, it's kind of nice. He will say that to me from time to time, dinner conversation. Because it's something that it makes people think differently. Laughter makes people, it actually busts open whatever you were thinking. Your mind stops when something hits you and it's funny. Your mind stops completely. It also stops completely when you're really scared, but I like funny better. I like funny better than scared. I don't watch horror movies, can't take it, too much. But your mind does stop at times like that. And in that stopping, there's open possibility for something new to happen. Because I was thinking maybe, negative thoughts and maybe not feeling good about myself, and then somebody just comes in and does something that stops all that, and then it becomes different. And so Shantideva also talks about why people who hold this thought are the darling of the world, because he said, for example, he gives the example of angry people. He said, angry people, nobody wants to be around them. They wear it on their face, he says. They wear it on their face. He said, your friends desert you. When you're angry, your friends desert you, and you don't have a moment to rest. You can't sleep because you're always in this angry state. And that is what communicates to people when they meet you, and that's not great. But if you're doing the opposite, then people will trust you, because they will know that you are not out to get them in any way, shape, or form. You're not on the make in any sense of the word. You don't want anything from them, and they will know that and feel that. And this, Rinpoche said, is how you become the darling of the world. Everyone will love to see you. Why? Because they will know you are so internally stable that they know what they will get when they speak to you. You know how it is. There's some people, you can't speak to them because you don't know what's going to come out, because they're so angry that they could blow up at any moment and you don't know when. And Khenpo Rinpoche said that this is really a very difficult situation, because how can you trust such a person? They're not stable enough to even hold a conversation. And so he said, if you are the opposite of that, and everybody knows you're stable and that you're going to be fine when they talk to you, then they won't be afraid to approach you. And then slowly they will trust you. And as they trust you, you will trust them, and goodness will come from the relationship. So now I feel happy because I've shared with you the one change you can make next year. You can even make it tomorrow morning when you wake up in the new year. You can say something like, may everything I do today benefit beings in some way, and may we all become Buddhas. And then try to maintain that habit of doing that every day. You can write it on a card, stick it on your mirror in your bathroom, or wherever you want to put it, and try it and see what happens. Your results may vary. Your mileage may vary. How long this takes to change you from the inside may be a factor of many things, but it's worth a try. So I appreciate your listening to the discussion. Now, of course, what Dharma talk would be complete without discussion? So we have 2 microphones, and I think just a little bit of waiting. And so if anybody has questions or curiosities, feel welcome to come and ask.
Good morning, Lama Kathy.
Good morning.
I need advice driving in the car.
Yes.
People who drive aggressively around me.
Oh, yeah.
The other day, I didn't have control over a situation, and another person was honking to me about it.
And someone
Somebody was honking at me.
Oh, really?
But I couldn't change anything about the situation. And it upset me a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
So something there, advice there, please.
You know, I tell you what, that is a tough situation because I don't know if you've noticed, but people are a little unhappy right now, and they really are taking it out in the car. I saw an old Walt Disney cartoon about road rage from the 1950s. So apparently it's been around for a very long time. My husband has a way of dealing with this. He just basically says, that person is trying to get there fast. The idea is that they don't really have patience. And this is what Khenpo Rinpoche said. You have to tell yourself, this person is not in control of their mind. And I can't take that personally because it's personal for them, but I'm just like driving my car. And yes, I was inattentive and maybe I got a little close to them, because I've done that. And they honk at me and it's like, well, thank you. I appreciate knowing. But, I've had aggressive drivers tailgate me. My husband says the answer for that is just let there be more space in front of you in the car in front of you. And so I think trying to to sort of play with the thoughts, with your own thoughts. My husband's joke was, well, maybe their loved one is in the hospital, and that's why they're driving so aggressively. But you could also just think, well, they get to keep who they are, but I get to keep who I am, So it's like you get to be you, even in this situation. So what you might think is, yes, maybe if you were at fault, like my getting too close to that person in the lane next to me because I was being inattentive, I say, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. But if the person is just being aggressive, you can say to yourself, well, may you be benefited by my interaction with you today. Even if it's, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's, But because we can't hold on to things too much. Because what happens is when we hold on to blaming ourselves for something, then that starts a pattern of reaction that we can kind of go down the drain with it. So one of the things you can do is you can say, may my negative feeling contain the negative feeling of all beings. That's a technique from the mind training tradition of Lojong. It's like, may my negative feelings stand in for the negative feelings of all beings, and may I and all beings be free of these kinds of negative feelings. You know, make the aspiration. May no being feel like I'm feeling right now. You know what I mean? And then say, and may we all become Buddhists, because that's a good rejoinder for any of these things, because there's Buddha underneath even our bad feelings. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that address it, or did you have another? Is there another part that maybe I'm missing?
I think that addresses it. I just needed a way to cope with like people being aggressive around me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think just that Rinpoche said you have to see them as being like out of control. One of my friends put it this way: they're going through their terrible twos. You can see them, you know, and that helps a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they're in pain and they don't have words.
Okay, thank you, Lama Kathy.
Okay, yeah, all right. Next, and then the next, and like that. Yes. Good morning.
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
Good morning.
As you may know, I never exceed the speed limit, and I never make a mistake driving.
Right.
When somebody, when I think somebody else is driving poorly, I say, may they have happiness in the cause of happiness.
I love that.
May they be free from suffering in the cause of suffering.
This works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, no, this absolutely works. You know, I like that. There was a person, one of my friends was seeing someone on television that they felt was not a good person. And they were sitting with me and we were watching a television program where some performer was performing, and my friend said, "Oh, look at that guy. He's so full of himself. He's so conceited. He's a no talent." And then she said, "Oh, wait a minute. May he be reborn in the Buddha realms. May he attain enlightenment quickly." She caught herself, you know, which I thought was really, that's one of my favorite stories about her. No, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, may they be reborn in Dewa Chen. Not necessarily today, but may they be reborn in the pure realms. Yeah. I see. What's great about that, David, what's great about that is that you try to do it, right? That you try to do it each time. And then it becomes like the new normal. I like that. Yes.
Hi, Lama Kathy.
Hey, hi.
You kind of touched on a lot of stuff that I'm thinking about recently, so thank you for your talk.
Okay. It's a human thing.
Yeah. I was kind of curious. So at some point you mentioned rather than going through, you know, guilt and shame about a situation,
Yeah.
you said,
Yeah.
you know, may the next situation go differently. Could you maybe talk a little more about that, especially for
Yeah.
like guilt and shame towards a situation that
Yeah.
you did something for? Or
I get it. Yeah. You know, I try to remind myself frequently that I woke up in samsara today. You know, it's like, oh gosh, yeah, I woke up in samsara today, and so I'm not going to be perfect today. You know, the Buddha called this world of cyclic existence, he called it an ocean of suffering. How sweet. And you know, but it's true, right? And I remember one time going to Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche saying, well, I did this wrong, I did this wrong, I did this wrong. Or this person is hurting, this person is hurting, this person is hurting. And one time he looked at me and he said, samsara. Just like that, samsara. So the idea is that I woke up in samsara today, so I'm not going to be perfect today, right? But I'm going to try to be, what is it? I'm going to try to be of benefit to everyone. So somebody asked Khenpo Rinpoche one time about guilt and shame. And he said there's a need for a little bit of guilt. We need to have a little bit of guilt, otherwise we will very readily repeat our bad actions. We will have no disincentive, for doing bad things because, so we need a little bit of guilt. But we can't be too excessive about it. He said, I don't exactly understand the difference, he said, between the English words guilt and shame. He said, I don't exactly understand it. He said, because I don't really understand English. He said, but here's what I think. He said, I think that shame, this really unhealthy shame, he said, comes from taking more than your fair share of responsibility for something that happened. Taking more than your fair share of responsibility for something that happened. And he said this is the sort of the what he sees it as, because then it becomes about us. It's another type of self-fixation. Some people are self-fixated by saying, I'm the best, right? I'm the best. I'm better than everybody. That's how some people's self-fixation manifests. But other people, their self-fixation manifests as, I am the best at being the worst, And so either way, it's still self-fixation. So we can use similar techniques that we were talking about with the road rage and stuff like that. By the way, David added something really nice to your answer. He was saying that when people act aggressively toward him, he makes the aspiration that they attain Buddhahood. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So that's, and I said may they be reborn in Dewa Chen, but not necessarily today. So, anyhow, there you go. So I think that for us, the first thing to notice is when it starts to hurt, when our feelings of guilt tip over into this unhealthy shame, by taking more than my fair share of responsibility, because we can't take we can't take responsibility for how they reacted, right? So in any case, we can think about that and stop right there. The first thing is to halt, is to stop and say, this is hurting me to do this, go down the drain with my own feelings. So at that point, that's a good time to call on the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, saying, okay, refuge. Okay, 3 jewels of refuge, help me out here. I need to change my attitude about this. Please give me your blessing that I can make this change. And then say to yourself, I have taken more than my fair share. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas help me to take the right amount, right? And then we can make the aspiration that no person, me or anyone else, no person feel this kind of shame ever, right? And that may all of us become Buddhas and have freedom from this. So it starts as an aspiration, right? And then slowly we can actually even use the mind training techniques of taking on the negativity of other beings. But first, I think it's good just to stop, right? Because whenever we're getting too self-involved in a situation, it always causes some kind of pain. There's physical pain or mental pain that arises when we, and that's our cue that it's time to stop. When we get that powerful mental pain, it's like, okay, I gotta stop here and see what's going on, and take a step back from what is happening, and then try to pivot. So that might mean I call a friend. And say, first you can ask Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Okay, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, help me out, and then call a friend. And talk with them and help process with them, and then what you might find out is that the other person is also similarly having trouble, and that maybe the two of you together can help figure something out. Does that help?
It helps a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay, no caller. Hello. Next. How are we doing? Okay, we're doing good.
How are you?
Yeah, this will probably be the last question. Is there another question out there? Oh, yeah, we have one more. Okay, very good. Okay, so yeah, then you'll be the second.
I'll try to make it quick.
That's all right. That's all right. I never give short answers anyway. So feel welcome.
I'll try to make a quicker question. We were talking about the anger part of it, and I feel like you were describing me in high school.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah, always wearing it on my face. And one of the things that I guess I've learned in here from meditation has been, like, I've changed that anger, and I don't really get angry at people. Like, even my 11-year-old daughter can't make me angry, which she does try now that she's figured out that it's not really a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. Now she's figured out it's a thing, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like flipping the light switch off and on. When they first find out, it's dangerous.
I laughed pretty hard because she figured out she couldn't make me angry, and she asked me if I had reached enlightenment, and I was like, definitely no. Definitely not.
But it's nice that she asked.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really nice that she asked. That's very perceptive of her.
Yeah, I took it as she's starting to see that there's some good reason that I come here.
Good.
But so even though I've gotten to this point where I don't really get angry at people, individual people, I worry about. I mean, people can look at my clothes and tell I'm an angry person about social justice things and all that.
Yeah.
And I guess I worry about whether or not my anger gets worn on my face when I like get out of the car after I've been listening to punk or something, punk rock.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it, and I wanted to ask if it's, like, I still have anger. I don't know if I'm trying to destroy it. I kind of use it as my motivation to get to the protest, and I use kindness and compassion to actually unravel the problem once I'm there. But I guess I worry about whether or not anger is still a big part of my existence.
I hear that. Yeah, and I'm really glad you asked about this, because a lot of people who are involved in social justice movements, some recognize the danger of their anger, and some don't. And you know this from being involved in the movements, that there are some people who they may be committed to the principles of the social justice movement, but they're actually using their protest skills and so forth as a way of exercising their anger. And I don't mean exorcising it, I mean making it stronger. As a way of doing that. And I think I'm happy that you've recognized the difference between being involved and asking for justice, right? And being firm. There's a difference between being firm and being angry. There's actually a difference. And you can be firm without being angry. That doesn't mean you sit and smile at a protest. I get your point. But we have to also remember that some of the most amazing protest movements in history came from people who had love in their hearts. If we look at the work of the Vietnamese Zen priest Thich Nhat Hanh, he was all about actually putting a smile on one's face. You know, it doesn't have to be a big smile. You know, it's like he would say, he called it a slight smile. You know, the idea that he said, it's like you're smiling to yourself, you know? And then he said, then you interact with people, which I found really, really interesting. I'm going to try to answer your question in a couple different ways. He did something that he called telephone meditation. And I practiced this when I worked at the newspaper. The phone would ring. He said, the phone rings. This is before cell phones. The phone rings, and he said, the phone rings once and you don't answer it. Phone rings twice. You haven't answered yet. He said, just center yourself during the first 2 rings. And then, he said, thinking of compassion and putting a slight smile on your face, then you can pick up on the 3rd ring. And I think that this kind of pausing is what helps us more than anything else. Just allowing ourselves not to react, you know, not to have the knee-jerk reaction to something, to just give ourselves a moment, take a moment. and then just settle ourselves and ground ourselves and then act. We don't always have that luxury, but when we do, we can at least say, may I benefit you? And somebody asked, well, what about politicians who do harm in the public sphere? What should we do about that? And Rinpoche, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, well, he said, if their character is really coarse, he said, I would show them pictures of the Buddha or mantras so that they at least have the impression of that in their mind stream. And so one of my friends started going to protests with a picture of the Buddha on a stick. I don't know if it's the best protest in the world, but it was interesting. And then what she also did was she wrote the four immeasurables on her placard. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they have that great happiness which is freedom from suffering. May they dwell in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. You know, so it's like that was her way of making her thoughts known. And then Rinpoche said, and for people who are doing harm, the forces in this world that are doing harm, he said, pray to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that this being or these beings slowly and gradually transcend their current limitations. Transcend their current limitations, that they are, and that they, that they meet the path and become Buddhas. Wow. You know, it's like we're praying for the people who we feel are harming. Because when we pray for the people we think are harming, we don't become them. Right? I don't know if any of this is helpful.
Oh, no, definitely.
Did I miss a part of your...
No, that was great. I was thinking when you were talking about like the politicians that do harm, I always try to remember that all people are generally good, and even if they're doing harm, it's really rare to find somebody that actually believes that they're going to do bad. Like, I'm doing bad right now. I may see bad consequences coming out of that, but they don't believe those consequences are going to happen for one reason or another. So, something I try to remember.
Yeah, and I often think that, you know, something happened to them in their life to make them into the person they are.
Nobody becomes, like, you can't think of somebody as a villain if you know too much of their story.
I get it.
Very hard.
That's very well said. And I liked, a person came to me about someone who had harmed them in the past and that they couldn't forgive that person. And I said, then if you can't pray for it, they said, I cannot pray for this person. There's no way, because their harm to me was so great. I can't even think about that. And I said, okay, fair enough. I said, do you by any chance have a photograph of them when they were a child? And the person said yes. And I said, okay, pray for that little child. Pray for that little boy, because something happened to him to turn him into the man who hurt you. And so sometimes that helps me to kind of break my heart open when I'm not willing to see the humanity of another person. So, thank you. Yeah. And then we have the last. Yeah. You can, yeah.
Thank you for your teaching today, Lama Kathy.
Yeah.
Not a question, just a prompt. I think you were going to mention your online teaching
that's right.
next weekend.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I wanted to let everybody know that two things are happening at our home monastery this week. Our home monastery is starting an Introduction to Buddhism class this Wednesday, and it's going to go for 10 Wednesdays in a row, and that's at KTD Monastery. You can go to www.kagyu, which is spelled KAGYU.org, and take at low or no cost. I think that they're actually doing it for donation. A 10-week course. And you'll have 10 different instructors, including the 3 Khenpos at KTD Monastery. The first person who is going to be teaching is Khenpo Tenkyang on this Wednesday. He's teaching Introduction to Meditation. Now, you may have You may have taken our 8-week class here, the Introduction to Meditation here. It's the same class, but it will be given in a completely different way. They're actually using our outlines. It's fun. And the outlines that we developed were actually developed for us in the 1990s by Dzogchen Ponlop Rinpoche. So you'll recognize at least the learning objectives. They're probably going to put their own spin on every single class. So Khenpo Sanjay is going to teach one. Khenpo Urgen Tenzin is going to teach one. I'm going to teach one. Lama Tom's going to teach one. And it's going to be 10 instructors in 10 weeks. It should be fun. And it starts this Wednesday. You can join anywhere, and then you'll get access to all the videos. Secondly, I totally forgot to tell anyone, I was asked to teach a weekend program for KTD on Zoom this coming weekend. Not the weekend we're in now, but the next weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So it'll cross over these events, but I'm teaching on something called Path of the Masters, which is which talks about the entire path of Dharma and how we can traverse the entire path of Dharma. All of the methods given by Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, shamatha, compassion meditation, mantra meditation. It's an overview of the entire path. And again, it will be given on Zoom by KTD Monastery. And it's Saturday morning, I think it's 10 to 12, and then Saturday afternoon, either 1 to 3 or 2 to 4, I forget. But same for Sunday. So you can skip next Sunday morning's class with me to be here, and then still watch the videos. So anyway, I wanted to let everybody know that the home monastery is doing that. It's the entire path in one weekend. I'm going to be really tired when it's over, I suspect. So thank you for asking about that. Okay, sorry I kept you after school. Let's dedicate the goodness of our session today. We're going to dedicate the goodness of our session to all beings who suffer. There's so much suffering going on in the world right now. And may we add to, pardon me, the goodness in the world. Begins with the words, by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Okay? Thanks, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Have a lovely day and a happy New Year. And I'll see you tomorrow. Okay.